Chapter 8, page 71. The next afternoon, Charant broke us into groups by position. Infielders here, catchers there, pitchers someplace else. I don't know how he did it, but it seemed like he was everywhere at once, giving advice, shouting instructions, waving his arms around. Charant hadn't lied. He was a maniac for fundamentals. According to him, none of us knew how to throw, how to catch, how to slide, how to swing a bat. Not that way, he'd say. Like this. Then he'd clap his hands together and scream. Keep trying, keep trying. He screamed all the time, but he wasn't one of the hard-nosed drill sergeant types. When Charant yelled, it was a happy yell, if that makes sense. Most of us busted our tails during or running the bases, hitting the cutoff man, backing up throws, laying down bunts, taking infield fielding pop-ups, working pickoff plays and rotation plays, all the little things. But Charant kept telling us, add up to the big things. You've got to buy into my system if we're going to win. But not everybody bought in. According to Todd Franks, everything about Charant was stupid. The way he ran practice, the clothes he wore, the way he clapped his hands, everything. It's bad to have any player ridiculing the coach, but when it's the guy on your team who hits the bar the farthest and runs the fastest, that's real trouble. It didn't take long before Todd had some followers. Not many, but maybe 3 or 4 guys. But those guys dogged it every time Charant wasn't watching them, and they dogged the 2-mile run at the end of practice. That made the rest of us feel stupid for working so hard. The final practice before our opener was strictly on defense. Charant stood at the plate, bat and ball in hand. He'd yell out a situation. First and third, nobody out, second inning, tie game. Then he'd bang the ball at one of the fielders. If the fielder went to the right base, he'd quiz the rest of us on why it was right. If he went to the wrong base, Charant would quiz him. That's all we did, over and over. At the end, Charant dragged us to the track and whipped us all in the 2-mile run, as usual. That was the dumbest of the whole bunch of dumb practices, Frank scribed in the shower room. He went on and on calling Charant a 2-bit bush leaguer, a loser. I was boiling. I wish Jimmy were there. Jimmy would have told Franks to keep his fat mouth shut, and Franks would have too if Jimmy had said it. Chapter 9, page 73. We opened at home against Menlo Atherton. I checked the lineup card as I entered the locker room. I was starting at second base, which was great, but Charant had me batting 8th. That I didn't like at all. It's funny how things work. Before the season started, I thought that making the freshman team was all I wanted. After I'd made the team, I thought if I could start at second base, I wouldn't care where I hit in the order, but seeing my name in the 8th spot made me burn inside. Right then and there, I vowed to get some hits, to push my way up in the batting order. Once we were in uniform, Charant called us together. We're going to pressure these guys. We're going to hit and run, bunt, steal bases, squeeze runners home. On defense, hit the cutoff throw to the right base, make the plays. Now let's go get them. That's when the butterflies hit. I don't even remember throwing the ball around before the game, but I do remember the ump yelling, "Play ball!" And I remember crouching, looking in at the batter, waiting for the first pitch in my game of high school baseball. Our pitcher, John Kister, wound and came in with a fastball across the heart of the plate. Strike 1. The season was underway. I caught a quick break. Their leadoff hitter bounced a 2-hopper to me. I fielded, straightened up, and threw him out, making that first play killed some of those butterflies. Todd Franks led off our half of the second inning with a triple with 1 out. He scored on a single to right. I came to the plate with 2 gone and a runner at first. Before stepping into the box, I looked down at Charant coaching at the third base. Charant did a zillion things with his hands, but that was to confuse Menlo Atherton. I watched his feet. Before I stepped back in the box, he scratched the dirt with his right toe, hit and run. I could feel the sweat come to my palms. The runner would take off on the pitch. The second baseman would cover the bag, leaving a hole between first and second. My job was to punch the ball into that hole. The pitcher came in with a curve on the outside corner of the plate. I swung down and through, hitting a ball that took 3 hops and skittered into the right field. The lead runner made it to third without a throw. Charant clapped and gave me the thumbs up sign. Our number 9 batter, Sean Taylor, wasn't much at the plate, so we'd need some luck to score the second run, but having a runner on third puts the screws on the other team. The catcher can't afford a pass ball, and since most catchers have trouble controlling a curveball, the hitter can figure he's going to see nothing but fastballs, and that's what Charant told us anyway. But knowing a fastball is coming doesn't mean you can hit it. Taylor's first swing was an hour late. On the next pitch, Charant put the steal on for me, a gutsy call. I've got average speed, so a good throw is going to nail me and end the inning. Their pitcher stretched, looked over. On his motion toward the plate, I took off. Maybe seeing me leave spooked him because his pitch was down in the dirt and skipped all the way back to the backstop. The run scored and I ended up at third. Way to execute, Sharant said, and he patted me on the back. Taylor struck out to strand me, but the whole team felt good as we headed out for the third. We'd put the pressure on Menlo Atherton and they'd crumpled. They crumpled like Sharant said they would. I looked at Franks as we ran out to the field. Not bad for a geek coach, I wanted to yell, but I didn't have the guts. After your team scores, it's important to keep the other team from scoring in their next at-bat. If you keep them down, they usually stay down, but if they score, they start thinking they can come back. So it wasn't good when their leadoff hitter banged a single right up the middle. Kister struck out the next hitter, and the guy after that grounded to short. Our shortstop, Bob Ward, made an okay play on the ball, and we got the force out, but there was no way I could turn to. As I went back to my position, I couldn't help thinking that if Jimmy were at shortstop, he would have gotten the double play to end the inning. Still, a guy on first with 2 outs isn't exactly a rally, but then Kister walked the next 2 guys loading up the bases. Sharant was going crazy, pacing around and waving his arms. Throw strikes, he kept yelling, throw strikes. Sure enough, Kister did throw a strike to the next hitter, only it was right down the middle with nothing on it. Menlo Atherton's hitter laced it to the fence in left center, driving in 3 runs. That's okay, I thought. We're down 1 run, but 1 run is no big deal. But their next hitter singled. Then came a double, a home run, another double, a walk, a double. Sharant took Kister out. Brought in Kerry Barstow. Bang, a single. Finally a strikeout to end the inning. 9-2. 9-2 Menlo Atherton. In baseball, when you're way behind, you can't take chances. You can't steal, you can't hit and run, you can't try for the extra base. All of the things we practiced and all the things Sharant wanted to be the signature of our team, all of them were useless. To make things worse, Menlo Atherton kept shellacking the ball. By the time the game ended, they'd scored 16 runs. In the locker room after it was over, Sharant told us to hold our heads high. Blowouts happen, don't get discouraged. I felt basically okay walking home, as okay as you can feel when you lose by 13 runs. At Massachusetts Avenue, a black thunderbird came flying around the corner, wheels squealing. It must have been the noise that frightened the Cocker Spaniel. The dog raced right into the street barking. The driver swerved, I'll give him that, but he still hit the dog. The Spaniel was thrown 15-20 feet in the air. The driver slammed on his brakes, the passenger door opened. A girl's face peered out for an instant. Then the door slammed shut and the driver burned rubber as he tore away. Some things you just know. As I ran over to that dog, I knew he didn't have a chance. He was lying on his side, panting heavily, blood trickling from his mouth. I kneeled down, took his head into my hands, looked into his eyes. I could see fear. You're going to be okay, I whispered. He blinked a few times, closed his eyes. I opened them once more. Then the breath went out of him, for the final time. The whole thing was over in a minute. From behind me, I heard a little girl. "Boss!" she screamed, and she burst into tears. I stepped aside and watched as she knelt next to her dog. Behind her were her parents, and then the neighbors crowded around. "Did anybody see what happened?" the girl's father called out. He asked me some questions, but I hadn't gotten the license number or even seen the driver. The girl's father shook his head. Some drunk high school kid. He covered the dog with his jacket, and then he led his daughter, still sobbing, back into their house. I stood a little longer, looking at the shape underneath the jacket, thinking that it wasn't fair, that nothing should ever have to die, ever. But I also felt strangely glad that I had been there, glad that I had been able to comfort the Cocker Spaniel at the final moment. The entire walk home, I found myself thinking about my father, about his last moments. I wish that someone, even a stranger, had been with him when he died. I didn't tell my mother what happened. I don't know why. I just didn't. And I thought I acted normally that night. But before my mother went to bed, she twice asked if something was wrong, and both times I told her I was fine, but I know she didn't believe me. Sometimes I can feel my mother thinking about my father, and I guess she can feel it when I'm thinking about him. Page 78, Chapter 10. We lost our next game and the game after that, and 5 games more after that. We were down, but Sharant wasn't. At practice, he was always upbeat, always harping on his precious fundamentals. The man was a perfectionist. He'd go over something again and again until everybody had it right, and as a reward for getting it right, he'd blow his whistle and scream, "All right, gentlemen, let's run our 2 miles." We played well in the first couple of games. We lost. Only a couple of errors, no stupid plays, but almost everybody hustled. We might have held it together if it hadn't been for Franks. In the stat book, Franks was the only guy on our team having a great year. He had 4 home runs, 16 RBIs, and was batting over .400. But he was dogging every drill at practice and raking Sharant in the shower room afterward. And with every loss, another guy would start acting like him. By the 4th game, players started missing signs, throwing to the wrong bases, not backing up plays. The little things, the things that Sharant had us work on so hard, those were the things we stopped doing. An outsider wouldn't have noticed any change, but Sherrant noticed. Every day you guys give me less, he'd say. We'll never win until you start giving me more. At practice, after our 8th loss, Frank ditched a sliding drill by claiming to have dirt in his eye, and then tried to skip the 2-mile run at the end of practice. I twisted my ankle, he told Sherrant. Sherrant wasn't a fool. Franks, I'm not going to make you run if you say you're injured, but I'm going to make you look me straight in the eye and say it again. Frank stared right at him. My ankle hurts. Sherrant turned his head and spit. You're excused. The following game against St. Francis was typical. Devin Maxwell, our leadoff hitter, walked. As I was batting second that game, and I laid down a sacrifice bunt to move him up. Junior Tupou followed with a pop-up to third. That put it on Todd Franks' shoulders, and he came through. He took a change-up out of the park to the straightaway center. He absolutely crushed it. We were up 2-0, and the sight of that ball leaving the park had gotten the adrenaline flowing. But the thing about losing is that you start to expect things to go wrong, and when you expect bad things to happen, they do. By the bottom of the 5th, we'd committed 3 errors. Our pitchers had given up 6 hits and 4 walks. Franks laced an RBI single in the 4th, but we were still behind 7-3. Then something strange happened. We rallied. Maxwell looped a double down the right field line to the lead off the 6th. I worked a walk. Tupou took a ferocious swing and hit a squibbler up the third base line. By the time St. Francis's pitcher fielded the ball, everybody was safe. That brought Todd Franks to the plate with the bases loaded and nobody out. Their pitcher came in with a fastball, and Franks was sitting on it. He sent a rocket screaming into left center. I held up between second and third until I saw the ball bounce. Then I took off and scored standing, with Tupou right behind me. Sherrant was holding up his hands to stop Franks at third, but he ran right through the sign. He wanted that grand slam. The shortstop cut off the throw from the outfield, wheeled and fired a perfect strike to the plate. Instead of sliding, Franks put his shoulder down and barreled into the catcher. When the dust settled, the catcher was rolling around in the dirt, holding his shoulder and moaning, and the ball was lying on the ground in front of the plate. Safe! Screamed the umpire, and our whole team came unglued. We didn't score any more runs that inning, but we were pumped as we picked up our gloves and headed for the field. Sit down, Franks, Sherrant said quietly as he came in from the third base coach's box. You've done enough damage for one day. Matt Lester's taking your spot in center. What? Franks said, astonished. Why am I coming out? Think about it, Sherrant replied, and if you can't figure it out, think some more. We ended up losing 9-7. In our last at-bat, Lester struck out, looking with runners at first and third. After the game, Franks confronted Sherrant. I scored, didn't I? I was safe. Doesn't matter. What do you mean it doesn't matter? I hit a grand slam and you say it doesn't matter? Franks was screaming. I mean, it doesn't matter. You run through my signs and you'll sit. You can't bench me. I'm the best player you got. Sherrant laughed. We've lost every game with you. We can't do any worse without you. Frank slammed his glove down. I don't need this. I quit. Sherrant didn't blink. Have your uniform laundered before you turn it in. Otherwise, there's a $10 fee.